Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Brittany and I like to talk about books. Today I am going to be reviewing book 4 in the Wheel of Time series, The Shadow Rising by Robert Jordan. I hope to have all 14 of the Wheel of Time books read before the show goes up on Amazon Prime. And if you haven't seen my previous reviews of books 1, 2, and 3, I've linked them here so that you can go check them out if you are interested. This review will start spoiler free and then delve into some specific moments and some specific questions and commentary. So you will get a spoiler warning beforehand. First, I just want to say that I really love Robert Jordan's prose. It's so beautiful while maintaining this simplicity that allows readers to cut right to the meaning. So in a lot of modern fantasy, we've got prose that is very simple, very easy to read, very easy to digest, even if the learning curve of the world itself is a little bit more tricky. And with Robert Jordan, he's able to take that beautiful purple prose that isn't really purple and add that layer of simplicity to it so that you get beautiful writing with the benefit of understanding what is going on. The way he constructs his plot, his character arcs, and world building in The Shadow Rising is probably my favorite of the Wheel of Time series thus far out of the first four. A lot of the main characters develop nicely in this book, and the audience is, of course, rewarded with some information on a culture that we've been slowly peeling the layers back on. It's almost like the culmination of all of the work that the audience has had to do with the world-building tidbits is paid off in this book by this plot central information that we learn about this culture. It took me about 2 weeks to finish The Shadow Rising, but I do think that the story itself is very well paced. A lot happens in this book, and each point of view is just as interesting as the last point of view. We most often flip between Rand and Perrin, and each of their journeys is very compelling. It thrusts the story forward, and even though we did have point of views from other characters, our main story in this Shadow Rising really rests with Rand and Perrin. And I think, honestly, that it took me longer to finish The Shadow Rising than it could have, because I was really relishing the story. I was really enjoying The Shadow Rising. I wanted to keep reading it, and so I think that is why it took me a little bit longer to finish it as opposed to getting right through it. So I do have some critiques about the books. These are spoiler-free critiques. They're mostly positive. I don't really have much negative to say about The Shadow Rising. I do think it's the best of the first 4 Wheel of Time books. My first critique is that a lot of our main characters get some very good development in this book. And it's kind of the beginning of a journey that we already started with them, that we've been watching progress, and that continues to progress through the next few books. When we first meet these characters, the Edmonds Field Five specifically, they're very childish. They have a lot of childish thoughts, they have childish actions, they make childish decisions. And they're on the cusp of adulthood without quite being there. Maybe Nynaeve is an exception, but even with her, I think she's got a lot to learn still and a lot of growing up to do. And so I think in The Shadow Rising, what we definitely see in this book is the start of that development, the start of these characters going from adolescence into adulthood, which I think it's a nice journey to also see and see how it mirrors the journey of the plot and how the story is progressing. Another good thing to always keep in mind about character development especially is that sometimes development includes taking a step backward as well as a step forward. And I think that we did have a couple of characters in this book who, in their development, they did maybe step backward as well as forward. 1 step back, 2 steps forward, that whole thing. And I just think it's very interesting to watch a character fail and watch a character lose and not succeed as it is to watch a character succeed, as long as they're doing something. And so I think that the development of the main characters in this book was phenomenal. My very favorite aspect of the book is that we do learn some earth-shattering information for a specific culture, and that information is directly related to what thrusts the plot forward in this book. And so I think it was a really nice moment to have this piece of world building be so crucial to the plot that it's not just there, it's not just this extra tidbit that Jordan knew, it literally makes a difference. And that, I think, is a really fantastic way of taking some of this world building that you're already doing and kind of centering your plot on it, instead of having the world building and the plot almost not intersect. I did have a few characters that I did not like spending time with them as the book was going along. There were a lot of decisions that some of the characters made that I found irritating. But overall, I thought The Shadow Rising was a really, really good book. Even, like, obviously it was a good Wheel of Time book, but it was a good book in general. It did make me cry at least one point. I think there might have been a second moment that also made me cry, but both connected to the same thing. And so any kind of book that can pull that kind of emotional reaction out of me, it's going to shoot up to the top of my list. And The Shadow Rising, I would definitely say, out of at least the first 4 books, is my favorite thus far. I rated The Shadow Rising 5 stars on Goodreads. It was a fantastic ride. It was full of emotion and conflict. It kept me hooked the entire time through. And even as I was like savoring all of the little tidbits that we get in the book, if you are reading The Wheel of Time and you make it all the way to The Shadow Rising, I do recommend that you read it, and I do recommend that you continue on afterward. I did continue on to Fires of Heaven, and I'm currently reading Lord of Chaos right now, which is book 6. I want to have book 7 done before the end of 2020, so we'll see about that. But now that is the end of my spoiler-free section of this review. So if you have not read The Shadow Rising, then I do recommend that you click away from this video and go watch something else that will not have anything to spoil it for you. So this is your spoiler warning. Okay, so now that we're in the spoiler section, I want to list off and talk about a little bit some standout moments from The Shadow Rising that really stuck with me even after the book finished. The first was the entire relationship between Egwene and the Wise Ones. She really got a lot of development of her character and of her powers in this book. Dream walking is just so interesting. I will never not be interested in reading about that. I did feel a little bit like Egwene was almost in Shadow Rising primarily to serve as a point of view on Rand that wasn't as negative as, like, say, Matt's point of view. I think she also basically functioned as a way for the audience to get to know Avianda a little bit better. I think Avianda is an important character, becomes an important character, especially when she is made Rand's Eel teacher. And so we needed another point of view on her to give us some more information, and I think Egwene was the right fit there because they're learning together, they're very close friends, etc., etc. Matt's hanging was also a standout moment for me. I loved his whole interaction. I loved him going through the Tearing Grill, even though he should not have and he knew he shouldn't have. I loved seeing the creatures within the Tearing Grill. I thought he got some very interesting power-ups out of it. His spear, the Foxhead medallion, and of course all of the implantation of all of the memories from the greatest military minds and battle strategy and all of that is bound to come in handy for Rand and in Rand's plan. I loved the comparison between Matt and Odin in his hanging on the tree. I thought, the price of knowledge being death was a very interesting way to put that folklore and mythological connection in there that Jordan seems to be so fond of. I did think it was interesting that Matt's spear has ravens on it. Now, I don't know if that's like foreshadowing for something that's going to happen with Matt later on in the series, but it kind of feels like it. Thus far, ravens have been indicative of the shadow in the Dark One and evil, and I'm keeping a watch on Matt because the raven marks on his spear hit me the wrong way, shall we say. Rand also in Rio Deon was very interesting. Of course, like I mentioned before in the video, that earth-shattering information that he learns about the Fae Eel and the Fae Eel's history is literally what leads to the next book's plot. So that was a really interesting way to get that information, and it was kind of just like with Matt's knowledge. It almost seemed like if the price of that knowledge was death, if you couldn't take it by your own hand, no less. And so I also, of course, learning a little bit more about Rand's parents was really cool. We got a nice little glance at his parentage in this, and then of course him having the dragons on his wrist now, marking him for sure as the Karakhan and as the Dragon Reborn as well was a nice moment. The coup in the tower was awesome. I did not like what happened to Swan, and I don't like Elida. I don't trust any of the Aes Sedai who took over the tower, and I'm really mad that Gawain helped them keep the tower from Swan. I am interested in what is going to happen further with Gawain. I thought that the tower coup was a good way to pay off Min's introduction at the beginning of the book. I was really glad to see Min again, because in the last book she gets sent off at the beginning and then we don't really see her again in the rest of the book. And so seeing her at the beginning of this book, a return to Tar Valon, was nice, and it was nice payoff to see the coup happen, or the aftermath of the coup, really, after Min had the viewing when she first arrived in Tar Valon of like the battle that she was seeing around everyone. I wish that there was something that could have been done about it, but of course, like Min has said before, her viewings, when she has them, there's not really much that can be done to change the outcome of those viewings. So the coup in the tower was very interesting. I loved it. I thought it made perfect sense, because I honestly could not imagine Nynaeve and Egwene and Elaine returning to Tar Valon to finish out their studies at this point. Like, they're already posing as full Aes Sedai. I kind of imagined them moving forward at this point and just developing their own powers outside of Tar Valon, since they're already more powerful than half the people there anyway. My next standout moment was the Battle of Edmonds Field. So earlier when I mentioned that this book made me cry, it was at the moment where we learned that Perrin's family was dead. Perrin is my favorite character, so when we found out that his entire family had been killed and that he was too late to save them, it just pulled at my heartstrings. It made me so sad for him, and then he just tried to continue on as if nothing had happened, and that made me really sad. But I thought it was really awesome to see the people of Edmonds Field and Two Rivers really pull together in that battle and fight off the Trollocs. I loved seeing the White Cloaks again and learn what they're up to. I don't think that the battle with them is done in this book. I think that they're like Perrin's main enemy at this point, and they certainly are not done with Perrin. I loved Loyal's development. I think Loyal is becoming more and more of a hero in his own right. Then I think he even realizes soon that they'll need to be writing books about Loyal instead of Loyal writing books about them. I loved everything about the Battle of Edmonds Field. I loved it. I thought Perrin really came into his own, and the development of his character over this book was really nice to see. My last standout moment was Nynaeve versus Mo Gideon. So we've been told up until this point that Nynaeve is very powerful, that she's got more potential than most Aes Sedai in the last 1,000 years. That if she actually could channel whenever she wanted to, her power would be nigh impossible to match. And now we actually see it. In The Shadow Rising, this was our first glimpse, this battle between Nynaeve and Mo Gideon, of actually getting verification that Nynaeve is as strong and as powerful with the One Power as the book has been claiming she is. It was nice to see her go up against a Forsaken and basically win. I wish that there had been a way for her to capture Mo Gideon at that point, but it was enough to see my girl go up against Mo Gideon and come out with the upper hand. She did, of course, throw the bracelet at her and break Mo Gideon's concentration with the power in order to win, but it was still a good moment. So now, let's talk about some relationships that happened in this book. There were two romantic relationships that really took the focal point in this book. The first was, of course, Perrin and Fae Eel. They end up married by the end of the book. I'm still not sure how to feel about that. I do like Fae Eel. I do think she's a good match for Perrin. But I really didn't like her at the beginning of this book. The whole stupid fight that they were having from the moment where he decided he was going to the Two Rivers until they find out his family is dead. That whole chunk of their interactions I could do without. I understood why I was there, because, couples fight. People don't get along all the time. But I thought Fae Eel was really annoying during that part. And I did not like how she tricked Loyal. Because you leave Loyal alone. But I do think that she was what Perrin needed by the end of the book. And so, again, I'm not 100% sure how I feel about them being married already this far, this early in the series. But I'm going to reserve some judgment on that relationship until I see it further along, after they've been married and really see the ramifications of that having happened. The other romantic relationship that we got a lot of focus on in this book was, of course, Rand and two of his ladies. So now I'm definitely convinced after this book that Avianda is the third. There's no way she's not. She's no longer a Maiden of the Spear. She's Rand's Aiel teacher, and he likes her, and it's inevitable that they're gonna probably develop some feelings for each other. I love, though, that she seems to not like him. She fights very hard against liking him. Like, if you watch anime, she is a tsundere to the extreme. And I love it. I love it. I love that their relationship that inevitably is going to develop from this book, it starts with the two of them not particularly liking one another and slowly starting to be friends. Because I love the moments in this book where Avianda forgets that she doesn't like Rand, and she just talks to him, and they have friendly conversations, and she really does a good job at teaching him what she wants to teach. What was annoying was listening to Avianda repeatedly claim that Elaine had some kind of possession of Rand. I understand that Elaine and Rand were a thing, and that she had given him these letters that everyone harps on about, and he's very confused about Elaine. But people are not possessions, and so I know why Avianda is doing this mantra. It seems, especially with the impression I got after reading this book was that Avianda started having feelings for Rand, and then she was trying to remind herself that she could not be with him because of Elaine. And that's why she repeatedly said, "You belong to Elaine." I understand that. I just don't like it. I didn't like both Elaine's indications of Rand being hers, and the other characters insisting that Rand belongs to Elaine. I'm not a huge fan of that kind of wording of the entitlement to someone's romantic relationship and options like that. I was not a huge fan of that, but I am interested to see how Rand and Avianda's relationship develops over the course of the series now that we've got the first indications of it in this book. Next, let's talk about some character arcs. So there were two big character arcs that we had in this book. We had Perrin going from a blacksmith into Lord Perrin, and we had Rand going from himself, you know, the Dragon Reborn into actually Kara Karn. And so not just being the Dragon Reborn, but fulfilling the prophecy with the Fae Eel as well. And I think that both of them had some pretty solid development in these arcs. I think Perrin's arc perhaps had more development than Rand's. I think Rand's development is going to last the entire series. I don't think that at some point he's going to stop developing as a character. And I don't think really that Perrin and Matt are either. But I do think that Perrin's development in this book was further along than Rand. Seeing him really step up and become Lord Perrin, as much as he hated that, and see him take charge and see him make those decisions on behalf of his home was very good. I loved it. I loved seeing the whole arc. I do think that without Fae Eel there, he may not have made as much of an arc as he expected. And I did like Rand's arc as well. I think Rand, after the Dragon Reborn, kind of came to terms with the fact that he is, in fact, the Dragon Reborn, and therefore there are prophecies and expectations and things that he needs to fulfill and do. And I liked seeing him take charge in this book of, I've got a plan, I'm going to do something about my destiny, and the rest of you are going to have to react to what I'm doing instead of me react to what you do. Having Asmodeus and Lanfear in their group with them was awesome. I did not see that. I must admit, I was very surprised that Rand was so suspicious of the peddlers. I did not realize that they were the Forsaken. And so I think that was a really nice touch as well for Rand. And then, of course, the ending of the book, Rand securing a teacher for himself, was awesome. And I've been already saying that I hoped that he would be able to find a teacher in order to show him how to use the one power, and I'm really glad that he did end up with one by the end of this book. Okay, so now I have some lingering questions and some predictions. So my first question that's lingering is, what is Fae doing? So Padon Fae, like I mentioned in the last review, he's really been introduced as like this kind of very scary antagonist for Rand, and we did get him in this book. We know that he's like specifically hunting out Perrin in the Two Rivers and trying to make enough noise in the Two Rivers to get Rand to come to him. But I'm really curious about what he's doing, what's going on with him, what the conclusion of his encounter with Rand in the Edmonds Field 5 is going to be. Really, I just want to know more about what Fae is up to. My second lingering question is, what is going to happen to that bracelet and collar? So Nynaeve does successfully get those Terran Grial that are supposed to serve the same way that an Adam does, but for male channelers. And she gives it to Bail Domon to sink in the bottom of the ocean. Who, of course, Bail Domon, he like shows up in every dang book. So definitely pay attention to him. But she gives it to him to sink into like the deepest part of the ocean. And I just know that they're gonna come back. I feel like it's gonna come back. They're gonna show back up somehow. And so I'm looking for them. Because I don't think that that's gonna be the last that we see of this important item that can control Rand, essentially. And then my third question is, can Stilling be healed? So we did, Swan and Leanne being stilled, it made me so upset, but one thing that I'm interested in is if that can be healed for them. So I really hope that by the end of the series, both Gentling and Stilling are able to be healed, that the male half, Sidene, is not tainted anymore. Like, these are some things that I have hopes for. And so I'm curious if Stilling can even be healed. And then kind of what goes along with that is Min sees around Logain's head this viewing of glory, and I'm really interested to know how Logain is going to achieve glory. So he does go off with Swan, Lian, and Min at the end of this book when they leave Tarvalin, but I am curious how that winds up with him achieving glory. So I do have a couple of predictions after reading this book. I have 3, technically. The first one is that I'm pretty sure that Avianda is Rand's third lady. I'm almost 100% positive, or was 100% positive after reading this book, that Avianda is number 3. I also think that Swan and Lian will be healed of their stilling somehow. I'm not sure how, and I'm not sure how long it will be, but I do think that that will happen. And then my third prediction is that Gawain is going to do something to Egwene. So we got a little bit of a build-up with the two of them. They seem to be interested in one another. Gawain certainly is interested in Egwene. He's almost a little obsessed with her. And it seems like he's pretty salty that she is choosing Swan in the tower and Aes Sedai. And Min did have that viewing of her, of him hurting Egwene. And so I'm curious if anything is going to come of that. I'm curious about what's going to happen with Gawain. Well, that is it. That is my review of The Shadow Rising, Book 4 in the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you like listening to me ramble about these books. I want you to, if you feel so inclined, leave me a like and comment below what your best standout moment of The Shadow Rising is. I couldn't pick between the ones I listed earlier what my favorite one absolutely was, so I'm curious what some of you have to say about it. I hope that you have a good rest of your day, and I plan to have my Fires of Heaven review up next week. I'm going to try to do a Wheel of Time Wednesday for a few Wednesdays if I can. Regardless, thank you for being here, and I will talk to you later. Bye!